We'll be looking at short approaches to tackle examination questions. As you can see, I'm here with some questions so that we can tackle them together. Now, the topics for this semester, basically for MTS 101 and MTS 105, are being listed below. We have set theory, we have indices, logarithms, or partial fraction, polynomial, equation, and all this. And we'll just be looking at the short approaches. And I believe that in our videos, we have released videos on polynomial. So let us cancel out polynomial, because I believe if you watch the video very well, you guys will not have any issue on polynomial. So to start with, we'll be moving on to sort. Let us look at the shortcut to tackle examination question involving sort. Now, what is the meaning of sort? We'll be mixing it with little teaching. When we are talking of sort simply means any equation having a square root. Now, 2 is not a sort form, not until it changes to what? The square root of 4. We don't need to waste time on that. Now, sort has 2 tables, and the table is this: sort h saying square root at the denominator. That is the first table of sort. Sort h saying square root at the denominator, and if you have square root at the denominator, what do? You rationalize. Now we all know how to rationalize. You multiply 2 by the denominator, and that will give us the square root of 3 over the square root of 3, and that will give us root 3 over 3. But that is not even where we are trying to look at. Your calculator, this cashew, can solve any question involving sort. Let us look at this. Let's assume we have 2 the square root of 5 minus the square root of 2 over the square root of 5 plus the square root of 2. Don't forget, how can we solve this? We are going to multiply 2 by the conjugate of the denominator. But yet, since we are having our calculator, yours is just to press the division sign. Now, if you look at your calculator, there is a symbol like this. So press that symbol and type it straight in your calculator. So we have it as 2 the square root of 5. So 2 the square root of 5 minus the square root of 2, press down. And then what do we have? The square root of 5 plus the square root of 2. And your calculator will give you your answer straight as what? As 4 minus root 10. You don't even need to stress yourself. Now let us look at another question on this. For instance, let us assume we have 2 the square root of 3 minus 5 over, let's say, the square root of 2 plus the root of 3. Now, if you want to solve this, you have to rationalize, and we don't need to waste our time, since for CBT question, they will only give you 45 seconds. So what you just need to do is press this division sign. Your cursor will be here. So type the question as you are saying it. So that will give us the division sign 2 the square root of 3. But the major thing you have to know is, after pressing the square root of 3, you have to press the replace sign. That is the right sign for the cursor to move out. And if pressing that sign, you will now press minus 5, then you press the down. If you press the down button, the cursor will move here, and then you type it straight. And what do we have? We have it as the square root of 2 plus the root of 3. So just press is equal to, and then you have your final answer. So that is that about sort. So we don't need to waste our time when we are talking of rationalization. Now, there is a major question that they are going to ask us under sort, and the major question is they will ask us to find the square root of the function. This aspect is every year question. They will ask you to find the square root of the function, and if you want to find the square root of the function, the shortcut, I will divide them into 3 forms. Now, the first form is this: I will have 5 plus 2 the square root of 6. They said find the square root of this. Do we get that? This is a question, 5 plus 2 is 6. They said we should find the square root of that function. Now, this is the shortcut. The shortcut is this. For the shortcut, for the first form of the shortcut, we must have 2 here. That means we must have a function of 2. Now, seeing a function of 2, then you change it to what? A quantitative reason. That is, what are the 2 numbers that you will add together to give us 5? And if you multiply those 2 numbers, we will have 6. Then ask yourself, what are the numbers? Now we must know that the number is what? Is 3 and 2. Now, getting your answer as 3 and 2, then you apply square root and the function. That will give us the square root of 3, the square root of 2. And what is the sign in this question? That is plus. That means you just put what? Positive sign. And that is all. Now let us look at this. Find the square root of 7, the square root of 12. They said we should find the square root of this function. We have said this so far. You are having 2 here. that means the shortcut will work for you. Now, what are the two numbers that if you add them together, we have 7, and if you multiply them together, what do we have? We have it as 12. Then what are the numbers? 4 and what? And 2. So that will give us the square root of 4 plus the square root of 2. And you know you cannot leave your final answer like this. What is your answer? The root of 4 will give us what? 2 plus what? Plus 2. So that is very, very simple. Now going to the second function. The second shortcut is something like this. Let us look at one of the equations they set in that year. They said we should find the square root of 9 plus 6 root 2. Now let us cancel them out so that we know that we have tackled them. Now this is a question they set in a particular year, and they said we should find the square root of this. Mind you, we cannot make use of the shortcut directly for this one. Why? The reason being in the sense that we are having 6 here. But don't forget, for the shortcut, we must have 2. Now, there are 2 things involved. One, that you can separate the number to 2 and a number. And another one that you cannot separate the number. Now, let us look at it. Can we split 6 down into 2 numbers? Yes. And that will give us what? 2 and 3. That means 2 times 3 is what? Is 6. That means I need this 2, I don't need this 3. So since I don't need that 3, what will happen? That 3 will go inside the square root. And you know when 3 is coming inside the square root, what do we have? It will change to 9. And that will give us what? 9 plus 2 will stay. Now 3 will come in, that will give us 9 times 2. And this will give us what? 19 plus 2 with what? With 18. Now since we are not having 2 here, that means the shortcut will work. And what is the shortcut? 2 numbers that if you add them together, you have 19. The same number that if you multiply them, you have 18. Then what are the numbers? So we must know that the number is what? 18 and 1. Because 18 plus 1 is 19. 18 times 1 is 18. So that will give us 18 plus 1. Then you apply square root. And you know this man is a taboo under surd. Because what is the root of 18? That will give us the root of 9 times 2. And that will give us what? 3 root 2 plus what? Plus 1. So it's very, very simple. And now let us look at the last aspect of questions they can give us under the square root of surd. And your calculator will solve it. Now let us look at this question. They say find the square root of 3 plus, let's say, 2 root 7. You get? They say we should find the square root of 3 plus 2 root 7. You can see it's not possible, though we are having 2 outside here, but it's not possible for us to have 2 numbers that you can add together to give us 3, and the 2 numbers that when you multiply them you have 7. It's not possible. So if you're having a nature of question like this, what you have to do is just to type the question straight in your calculator. So just type 3 plus 2 root 7. So 3 plus 2 root 7 will give us 3 plus 2 root 7. Now don't forget that is a question. But the question they are asking us is say find the square root of that question. So just press the square root of answer. Do we get that? Type this in your calculator, press is equal to, then press the square root of answer. So if you press the square root of answer, your answer will give us 2.7879. Now the answer you are having with your calculator is 2.879. Then you will now go to your options one after the other to press your option. Anyone that gives you 2.879 is the correct answer. Now let us assume that we cannot solve this. We have solved it before. We have 9 plus 6 root 2. Let us assume that we want to make use of the third approach. That means for your calculator, we are going to press this straight in your calculator. 19 plus 6 root 2. 19 plus 6 root 2 will give us 19 plus 6 root 2. Then you press the square root of answer. Do we get that? The square root of the question is the square root of answer here. So if you press is equal to, this will give us 5.24. Now the answer here is 5.24. Now let us write one of their options. They said we have 5 root 2 minus 1. They said your option B is 3 root 2 plus 1. They said your option C is 3 root 2 minus 1. So if you are having this now from the question, our answer is 5.24. So that means this is our answer. So then that means go to your option A. Press 5 root 2, then minus 1. 5 root 2 minus 1, press SD. This will give us 6.07. It's not the answer. So press this in your calculator. 3 root 2 plus 1. So press SD again, and that will give us 5.24. 4. You can see that is what the answer. And that is the end of questions under sum. Now under sum again, there is something your calculator can solve. They can ask you to simplify. They said simplify the square root of 100 minus the square root of 75 plus the square root of let's assume we have it here as 25 plus the square root of 48. You know, it's not easy setting question. But now let us look at it. They say we should simplify this. Though we know how to solve them normally, you reduce everything. But because you are doing CBT, 45 seconds to solve a question. Just type it straight in your calculator. And that will give us what? The square root of 100 minus the square root of 75 plus the square root of 25 plus the square root of 48. Then you press is equal to. Your calculator will give you your answer straight as what? 15 minus root 3. And then you pick your answer. So you cannot tell me that you will make use of 45 seconds to solve this. Please, you need to know the calculator hint. And lastly, under the solve, they will now ask you what we term as what? The rationalization of variables. Now, when they are asking you rationalization of variables, they are not questions you can solve within 45 seconds. There are questions that will waste your time. They will solve them using 3 minutes, at least 3 minutes. But see, you don't need to solve. Now let us look at a year like that. I guess they asked last year. Yes, last year they said find x if the square root of 3x plus 1 minus the square root of x plus 4 is equals to 1. They now gave us option A to be minus 5. They gave us option B to be 0. They gave us option C to be 5. And they gave us option D to be minus 7. Now for this, if you want to solve it normally, like you want to solve it normally, it will waste your time because you square both sides 2 times. You square both sides 1 time, the square root will still show. You square it again, it will waste your time. What you just need to do is to insert the values of x inside this function. And if you want to insert the values of x inside this function, be testing for positive value. Leave negative value cannot be the answer. It cannot be the answer because the answer is not complex function. So your negative options cannot be the answer. So test for 0. Insert your x as 0. That will give us the square root of 1. What is the square root of 1? 1. Insert your x as 0. If you insert your x as 0 here, what do we have? The square root of 4. And that will give us 2. Is 1 minus 2 equals to 1? No. 1 minus 2 will give us minus 1. That means this is not the answer. Then test for option C. Put your x as 5. What is 3 times 5? 15. 15 plus 1 is 16. What is the square root of 16? 4. Minus what is 5 plus 4? That will give us 9. What is the square root of 9? That will give us 3. And what is 4 minus 3? That will give us 1. Do we get that? And that means the right option is what? Is option C. And that is the end for sum. So that means we have cancelled sum. So not to waste time. Not to waste time because we want to tackle like let's say 4 topics for this first video and then we release another video. Now, so far so good. Many of you have been shouting partial fraction. Now, don't let anybody deceive you that they will not ask you partial fraction. They are going to ask you partial fraction. And you guys know that solving partial fraction is very, very tedious. Like very, very tedious. You know, you rationalize, you find the function of A, B, C, and the rest. But since so far you are doing CBT, you just have 45 seconds. Now, we are going to tackle partial fraction within the space of 1 minute. Now, let us see how we can solve partial fraction. Now, let us assume that they are asking you to resolve 3 into x squared minus 3 over x squared plus x minus 2 into partial fraction. Mind you, they are going to give you options. They gave you option A as this. They gave you option B as this. And they gave you option C as this. Now they are asking you to resolve into what? A partial fraction. So for partial fraction, you don't need to stress yourself. It's very, very easy. Now look at the shortcuts once and for all. anytime you are solving partial fraction, put your x as 0 in the question. So that means insert your x as 0, all this man is 0. Do we get that? And what do we have? 3 times minus 3 will give us minus 9 over, we are left with minus 2 here. That means putting our x to 0 inside the question, what do we have? Our answer gave us 9 over 2. Now, don't worry, don't forget that they are going to give you option. Inside the option, go and insert your x as 0. So putting your x as 0 here, just take your calculator, that will give us 1. Put your x as 0 here, this over this will give us minus 2. So 1 minus 2. Put your x as 0 here, we have it as minus 3 over 2. Just press it the way you are saying it. And this calculator here, the answer here is giving us minus 5 over 2. That means they are not the same. This cannot be the answer. The same thing, go here, put your x as 0. Put your x as 0 here, what do we have? Minus 2 over minus 1 will give us plus 2. Put your x as 0 here, what do we have? Minus 1 over 2. Then, what do we have? 9 over 2. Without wasting time, which one is your answer? B. You will just click on B, and that is all. Now, that is all about partial fraction. But not to assume that you guys have gotten into partial fraction. Mind you, they are going to give you options. This is part of their options in that particular year. We have option B to be 5x plus 2 over x squared plus x plus 2 minus 5 over 2x minus 1. We have option C to be 2x plus 1 over x squared plus x plus 2 minus 3 over 2x minus 1. You guys don't need to panic when we are talking of partial fraction. It's easy. Partial fraction is the easiest. Just insert your x as 0, that means all this one is 0. And what do we have? Minus 7 over, multiply this, minus 2. That means from the question, your answer must be 7 over 2. Then go to your option, go and put your x as 0, all this man is 0, all this man is 0. So what do we have left? We have 1 divided by 2 plus what? Sorry, 5 over minus 1 will not give us plus, it is minus 5. And this will give us what? Minus 9 over 2. It's not the same, that means that is not the answer. Put your x as 0, what do we have? 2 over 2 will give us 1. Now, minus 5 over minus 1 will give us plus 5. And that will give us 6. That means that is not the answer. Put your x as 0, what do we have here? We are left with 1 over 2. Now put your x as 0, minus 3 over minus 1 will give us plus 3. And that will give us what? 7 over 2. So anyone that gives you 7 over 2 is the right answer. So that means we are done with polynomial, because we said we have released polynomial in our subsequent videos. We are done with surd. We are done with partial fraction. Now, just within the space of time, you don't need matrix shortcut, because I have seen a lot of videos that they have been releasing on YouTube. They are teaching you shortcuts for matrix. Don't mind them. Don't use shortcuts. Don't use calculator when we are talking of matrix, because for matrix, before you insert, before you type the function, before you press dim, before you edit, before you now solve the function, 45 seconds is out. You don't need shortcut for this. But the only shortcut you need for matrix is this. Now, when we are talking of matrix, what is the shortcut you need? Now, nobody will be teaching you addition and subtraction. You should know that. You don't need determinant. You know the meaning of determinant of a 2 by 2 matrix. You know the determinant of a 3 by 3 matrix. Now, if you want to solve a determinant of a 3 by 3 matrix, let's assume we have 2, 0, 1, we have 5, we have 1, we have 2, we have 6, we have 1, we have minus 1. Don't use calculator to solve this. It's better you solve it on your own. And how will you solve? You assign signs to the first row. That means you assign positive, negative, and positive, and then you pick them one after the other. You cancel this row, you cancel this column. What do we have? 1, 1, 2, minus 1. Pick minus 0, cancel the row and the column. What do we have? 5, 6, 2, and minus 1. Pick this one, we have it as what? Plus 1. Cancel this and cancel this. What do we have? 5, 6, 1, 1. Now we all know how to solve this. Do we need to finish it? Okay, this time this will give us minus 1, this time this will give us minus 2. Anything times 0 is 0, and that means we have it out. So now, let us move on to the next aspect of matrix. And this aspect of matrix is what we call the inverse of a matrix. Now, when we are talking of the inverse of a matrix, we have two types. We have a 2 by 2 and we have a 3 by 3. Now, please, nobody will ask you a 3 by 3 matrix. Nobody will ask you the inverse of a 3 by 3 matrix. The only type of inverse that they are going to ask you is the 2 by 2 matrix. And now, before we look at the shortcuts, let us look at the formula. The formula is what? The adjoint of A over what? Determinant of A. And this also can give us what? 1 over determinants times what? Times the adjoint of what? Of A. So we don't need to stress ourselves when they are asking you questions pertaining to this. Let us look at this. They said if A is equal to 4, 1, 2, and 1, they said we should find the inverse of A. It's very easy. How can you solve? That means what? Our A inverse will give us 1 over determinant. What is the determinant of it? That will give us 4 minus 2. And what is 4 minus 2? That will give us 2. Now, see, for you to now get your adjoint of A, this is what we are going to do. You are going to interchange the major diagonal. That means you interchange them, and that will give us 1 and 4. And now, see, the minor diagonal, leave them like that, but apply a negative sign to them. So that will give us minus 1 and minus 2. And this is the final answer for what? For the inverse of A. Now, let's look at this last question. Under the inverse of A, they say if B is equals to 1, minus 1, 2, and 1, they say we should find B inverse. So how can you find B inverse? The first thing you have to do is to get the determinant of B. And that will give us the major minus the minor. And the determinant of B is what? Is 3. And now we will now proceed towards our B inverse. And what is B inverse? 1 over the determinant into what? Into the adjoint. And we have said it. What is the meaning of adjoint? You interchange the major diagonal. We still have it as 1 and 1. And apply negative sign to this, we have it as 1. Apply negative sign to this, we have it as what? Minus 2. And that is the end of what? Of a matrix. Now let us look at the last aspect when we are talking of matrix. And the last aspect of matrix is when they are giving you a quadratic equation. Now let's look at this a linear equation. They say find x, y, and z. Given that minus 4x plus 2y minus 9z is equals to 2. 3x plus 4y plus z is equals to 5. X minus 3y plus 2z is equals to 8. Normally, we are meant to make use of matrix to solve this, but you don't need the approach of a matrix. All you just need to do is to take your calculator and then you solve. For you to take your calculator and solve, you have to press on mode. So for this calculator, you press on mode and you will see equation on number 5. So press 5. Now, after pressing 5, look at this. These are what? Are 3 unknowns equation. So you will now go to 3 unknowns equation, and 3 unknown equation is on number 2. You press 2 and then it will ask you for your value. So what is your A1? We have it as minus 4. Minus 4 is equals to, we have it as 2 is equals to, minus 9 is equals to, we have it as 2 is equals to, we have it as what? 3 is equals to, we have it as 4 is equals to, we have it as 1 is equals to, we have it as 5 is equals to, press this 1, the coefficient is minus 3, here is 2, and here is what? Is 8. After pressing everything, press is equal to again. That means your x will give us 7, and your y will give us minus 3, and your z will give us minus 4. And that is all about matrix, and that is what they can ask you under the matrix form. Now, in our subsequent videos, we will be releasing more shortcuts on the remaining topics. This is just the first video. In our subsequent video, we will release more shortcuts. But just for the sake of the non-major that want to write exams very soon, under the set theory, there are a lot of things you have to note. Now, please and please, don't read rigorous proving. I know many of you will be reading rigorous proving. Don't read rigorous proving. Under the rigorous proving, I'm not saying they will not ask you rigorous proving, they will ask you. But under the rigorous proving, there are some aspects you have to know, and the aspect you have to know is what we term as what? A De Morgan's rule. You need a De Morgan's rule, And when we are talking of De Morgan's rule, what are the functions? We have it as what? A intersection A to give us A union A to give us A intersection empty set to give us empty set, A union empty set to give us A. And also we have to look at the effect of complement. The effect of complement here will give us what? A prime intersection what? B prime. And a lot of things like that. You don't need to, under the century there are a lot of things you have to major on, but under the sequence and series there are three aspects you have to major on. You have to major on the arithmetic mean. If we ask you arithmetic mean, you have to focus on the geometric mean, you have to focus on the harmonic mean, and you have to focus on questions that the term as what? As a consecutive term. This is where we are going to end the first video, and we will release more videos as time goes on. For the sake of people that want to write exam, we are going to, after this video, you will see some questions. Please and please do well to solve those questions. That is what they will give you, and those are the aspects you need to focus on. I remain my humble self, Salami Tite Lope Adeniyi. Please don't forget to like, don't forget to share, and don't forget to subscribe. I love you all. Thank you very much for watching my channel.